Hey guys, welcome to My Sew Bliss. Today I'm super excited to be partnering up with Baby Lock sewing machines and bringing you another sewing tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a children's robe just like this one. It has a hood on it, has a tie, and then two front pockets. It even has like a little loop on the inside so you can hang it on the door really nice, or like a hook really nice. So it's a really quick and easy sew. I just got some really soft fuzzy fabric from Joann's. My son really likes Pokemon and he really likes snuggling up in blankets, so this is pretty much just like a blanket he could wear. It is why I made it for him. So I'm excited to make another one for my other son, and this one's going to be out of this fun shark fabric that I also got from Joann's. So they have some really nice fun soft stuff. It's not the fleece, it's more like a minky, so it's like extra soft and cozy. So that'll be really fun. I'll put a link down below in the description for the pattern. This pattern comes from Love Notions. I love their patterns. They do a great job making their patterns and making sure everything is really awesome. So I've made quite a bit of their patterns, and this is just another great one that they have for kids. And then I'm also going to be using my Baby Lock Brilliant, which is this machine right here. This is one of my favorite machines that Baby Lock has. It's the perfect everyday machine for every project I sew, and I love it. One of the accessories that I'm going to be using with it is the walking foot, and that's because I'm using this like minky fabric. A walking foot helps so it moves the fabric on top as well as on bottom. So the feed dogs on the bottom help move the fabric along, while a walking foot helps it move the fabric along on top as well, so there's not as much shifting because it's so slippery. So that's a really nice foot to have no matter what machine you have, and especially when you work with fabrics like this. So I highly recommend it if you're using any kind of slippery fabric. If not, if you're just using like a cotton or something a little more simple, which is totally fine, you can use a regular foot. Just wanted to let you know I will be using that. So other than your fabric, the pattern, sewing machine, you're just gonna need your basic sewing supplies. So let's get started. One thing that I wanted to mention, if you're working with this kind of fabric, it is going to fray or have all these fuzzies falling off a lot of the times. So I like to keep a handheld vacuum close by for quick and easy cleanup so it doesn't drive me too crazy. And then once the project is finished, you can actually stick it in the dryer for a few minutes, and that actually helps collect all the lint and stop it from being too much and too crazy. So just a suggestion for you. For our first step, we're going to be taking the belt loop. We're going to be preparing those and then preparing our pocket pieces as well. So I've just got both of those ready to go, and then I'm going to take this and fold it long ways, right sides together, and I'm just going to sew right down this long strip. And again, with this fabric, because it's slippery, it's always going to be a good idea to pin, even if it's something small or short or not really something you would usually pin. Like something like this I probably wouldn't usually pin, but because it's the slippery fabric, I like to get it pinned really well so it stays in place and I don't have any shifting while I'm sewing. Once I have that tube sewn, then I'm just going to take my tube turning tools and turn it right sides out. You can use whatever method you prefer. These just make it really easy. Sometimes I don't like to use the pointy end because I don't want to ruin the fabric. So hopefully, there we go. Okay. And then once you have it turned right sides out, I like to finish it off with a top stitch right along the seam line. So if I brush it the right direction, I'm going to do it just right along the seam line just to help it lay flat for us. Once we have that tube top stitched, then we're just going to take it and divide it into 3 equal pieces and cut it We can set those off to the side. So now we can do our pockets. And our pockets, we're going to have right sides up, and we're going to fold down the top edge by 1 inch. So I'm going to measure that and then pin it in place. Over at the sewing machine, we're just going to come and stitch about 3/8 of an inch in, which is our seam allowance. We're going to stitch down each edge. And then with those sewn, you can just flip that so that it goes to the back, and it's going to fold your sides in the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then we just have that nice finish on our top. And if you want to, you can do a top stitch. I'm going to do one, and I'm just going to do it from the back so that I can catch this really well. Now with the fabric I'm using, you are not supposed to iron this, so I'm not going to, and I'm just going to press it with my fingers and then pin it in place. So we're just preparing the edges of the pocket to then go on our front pieces. So I'm just folding it over 3/8 of an inch for the seam allowance, pinning it in place before we place it on the front piece. When your pockets are ready to go, you're then going to take, this is my front piece, and I'm just going to fold the pattern piece back right where those pocket pieces are supposed to lay. So that is right where it's going to go. The top is going to lay right there. So I just like to place it, and I can kind of see them through my paper. So I place it, and I'm going to pin it in place just through my one layer. I have both of them sitting here, so I'll just make sure it's through one, and then pin the other one in place so that we're ready to sew. Once you've got those pockets nicely pinned in place, we are then going to stitch around the 3 edges. I just start at one of the top corners and sew straight down. Once you have both pockets sewn in, I'm just going to stay at my sewing machine and show you. I'm going to put these little belt loop pieces on, and on the side there were some triangles on the pattern pieces, so I'm just matching the belt loops up with those triangles, and I'm just going to match, has some extra fuzz on it. I'm going to match it up and then just loop that around and match that up there, and you can baste it, or I'm just going to sew a normal stitch to really kind of strengthen it, so it'll have double stitches on it, but I'm just going to sew that in place. And we're going to do this on both of our side pieces so that in the side seams you will have these loops to hold the tie. So for our third loop, we're going to be putting it on the back piece, like I said, so that it can be a piece to hang it on, like a door or something. And with our side ones, we did it on the right side of the fabric and looped it on the side. For this piece, we're going to do it on the inside of it. So this way, your loop is going to be on the inside of your robe. If you want it on the outside, you can do the opposite and do it on the outside, right side of the fabric. But for now, for me, I want it on the inside. I'm going to put it right in the middle on the wrong side of the fabric. Once your final loop is placed, I'm going to take, this is my back piece, I'm going to attach my shoulder seams now. So I'm just taking the front pieces, laying them right sides together with my back piece, and going to pin them at the shoulder seams. It's just easier to stay here at my sewing machine than going back and forth for these little steps like this, because we're just going to sew straight across on those shoulder seams. Next, we're going to put in our sleeve pieces, before we do our side seams. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it and put it right sides together. It looks a little wonky at first, but just bear with me. So I'm doing the middle of my sleeve piece when it's folded in half. I'm going to put that with our shoulder seam. Pin that in place and then open it up. So looks kind of weird like that, but we just pull it around and we're going to fit it to the sleeve. So I'm going to match it up with this side seam and this corner right here, and then the same on this side. So it kind of bunches together, but it all works out in the end. Okay, and then if I want to, I can pin it a few more times, which I probably will because it's already slipping a lot. So let me get this all situated before we take it over and sew it. And with that sleeve pinned in place, I'm then just going to stitch it right along that seam. I'll just do this for both of my sleeves. After that sleeve is sewn in, we're then going to take our pieces, put them right sides together. So I'm going to be putting my back piece to my front piece, and the sleeve is going to fold in half. And we're going to lay it so that we can sew our side seams. And we're going to be starting at the sleeve and sewing all the way down. So it's a really nice, just like continuous stitch from the top of the sleeve. And then this little loop is going to go to the inside or towards the right side of our fabric. So I like to pin it, match up the seam right here at the armpit, and then go out from there. Just make sure everything gets lined up. And again, just pin it really well. And then we'll just do the same exact straight stitch that we've been doing down each side of our seams. With those side seams sewn, you should have what's starting to look like a very cute robe. You could even have your child try it on if you want. I mean, really, a robe is either going to be too long or maybe too wide, but at this point, I think it's looking really good. So now we're actually going to hem our sleeves and the bottom of our robe. And with this fabric, I feel like it's super quick and easy. I don't have to iron it. You're not supposed to iron this fabric, so that's helpful. But I'm just gonna flip it. My right sides are still on the inside, so I just flip it out and measure that about an inch. Where's my ruler? There it is. So it's about an inch seam on this one. Oh, that was an inch and a half. Okay, so we're good at an inch, and I'm just going to pin that in place and then sew in the round. So super quick and easy to get the sleeves hemmed, and pretty similar to the bottom as well. This project just has a lot of straight stitching is what it is. But I feel like it's a really great project and hopefully really good for beginners. I feel like it is, so I like it. So I have one sleeve done. I'll come over and do the other one, and then we'll do the hem. With all those pinned, I'm just going to take them over to my sewing machine and stitch right along the edge of the sleeves and of the hem so that it sews that in place. With our hems sewn, we're then going to set that off to the edge for a minute and get our hood prepared to be sewn on. So obviously I'm doing the hood one version. There's also one that doesn't have a hood and it's just like a band on it. So if you're not doing the hood, you can just skip this part. But we're just going to take our hood pieces and put them right sides together and pin right along this curve right here. And that is what we're going to sew right now before we sew it on to the actual robe. Now we're ready to attach the hood to our robe. So right along here is going to be that line that we're going to attach it to. So this is the center back of my robe, and then this is the side fronts. So I'm just going to make sure it's going to be right sides together, and I'm attaching the right part of the hood. So we're coming down and attaching this part right here. So I'm going to open it up, and the center back of the hood is going to match with the center back of the robe, and that's right where we had that loop that we have for hanging. That's going to be right there as well on the inside. So this is right sides together. Make sure you do that. And then on the front pieces, there should be, I put little clips where this will match up. So this is going to come and go right along this edge and match up right where those clips are is going to be the tail end of your hood. So make sure those match up to make sure you're pinning it evenly across. So I just pinned the middle and then that end point, and now I can just pin the middle section and then go to the other side, and then we'll just sew that on. Over the sewing machine, we're just going to start right along the edge where the hood starts matching up, and we're sewing at our normal seam allowance of 3/8 of an inch, and just sewing along. Make sure you don't get anything else caught in here. This fabric especially is a beast to unpick, so hopefully you don't have to unpick anything. I don't think that one's actually pinned. Okay, so I'm just going to start right along this end and go across. With the hood sewn on, we're going to set that off to the side and now prepare the hood band, which is this really long wide strip. And you should have 2 of them. We're going to place them right sides together, just like this, and then sew along the shorter ends, just one of the shorter ends. So I'm just going to go straight stitch right along there. Once you have that middle seam sewn, you're then going to open it up, and on the ends, we're just going to fold them right sides together and just pin right here so that we can stitch this to create that really nice finish at the end that'll go along with the hem on the bottom of the robe. So I'm just going to pin that one in place because we're going to be sewing at 1 inch in on either end of this long piece. So I'm just folding them right sides together and pinning. Then I can take that over to the sewing machine and stitch at 1 inch in from the end. After you have those 1 inch seams sewn, you're going to flip it so it's right sides out and point that, get that corner out. If you need to trim your fabric, you can. Do the same thing on the other end. And then we're going to be ready to pin this onto our robe. So that's all ready to go. Set that over here for a second so I can open up the robe, and we're just pinning it all along this outside part of the robe. So I'm lining one of our ends up with the hem at the bottom, and we're just putting right sides together, not that way. That was just wrong sides. So make sure you do right sides together, line up your raw edges. You'll have like 3 layers that you'll be going through all the way around. So we'll pin this in place, and then I'm just going to line it up and pin all the way around. And we'll go around the hood too. When you're ready to sew the band on, you want to make sure every once in a while you want to check to make sure you have all 3 layers lined up, because I've found that that middle layer sometimes slips, especially with this slippery fabric, and it's not as lined up as it needs to be, and it can just send things really wonky. So always be checking and keeping an eye on your fabric. One thing that is suggested in the pattern is that once you are done sewing on that band piece all the way around, that you do a top stitch and sew the seam allowance. So this is a pretty thick seam allowance, especially with this fabric. Sew it down. And they suggest like a double needle stitch. And with the fabric that I'm using, you can't really see the stitching. It kind of gets hidden in the fluffiness. So I'm just going to do a straight stitch and just catch this seam allowance. And if you want to, you can do it from the inside. And just, yeah, so right along here. You could even stitch in the ditch if you want to, but it's just to really keep this seam allowance a little more clean on the inside, because you are going to see it when the robe is open. So I'm just going to do that real quick. For our final piece of our robe, we have our tie, which is just a really long piece, and we just need to fold it in half, and we're going to sew one end closed. So we'll sew in right here and then pivot and then go along the edge, and then the other end we'll leave open so that we can turn it right sides out. And on the pattern, it does say that you can top stitch both sides of the fabric once it's turned right sides out. I am not going to do that because, like I said earlier, my fabric kind of swallows the stitching and you can't even see it, so it's really not, doesn't really serve a purpose. So, and on mine, I sewed two pieces together because my fabric wasn't long enough to create the tie, so that's why I have a seam right there, but it shouldn't make a difference. Okay, so once I have it pinned, I'll just take it over to the sewing machine once again and sew a really long straight line and one of these ends closed. So I'll probably start right here so that I make sure to leave that one open, because if not, I'll probably forget and close it if I wait till the end. So I'll start here, sew all the way down to this end, and then pivot and sew that part closed. And then once that's sewn, I'm going to use my turning tool again and just stuff the whole thing on here. So this opening right here that's still open, I'm just going to tuck those ends in all the way around, take it over to my sewing machine, and just do a straight stitch across. Maybe poke it a little more in so it's nice and secure. So if you want to do the top stitching, you can definitely top stitch around this, but like I said, I'm just going to leave it like it is. And then once you have that tie finished, you can thread it through your loopholes and you're all done with your robe. How cute is that? Love how this turned out. Love how comfy and cozy they are. Now I need to make one for myself. And now I have fluff all over. I need to go throw this in the dryer and have it collect all the lint. That's one thing that I mentioned earlier in the video. You just want to put your dryer on tumble, especially if you're using like this fabric, because you don't want the heat with it. But the tumble dry just helps collect all that lint in a really easy way. So I need to do that and clean up my sewing room now, so we'll probably have to get the vacuum out now. But I love how this project turned out, and I love how cuddly and fluffy they are. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure to give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe. I'll put links down below for the Baby Lock Brilliant and for the robe pattern that you guys can check out. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!